Hey guys, this is Guys Talking About Stuff. It's me, Kevin.
Me, Alex.
We're going to be talking about Pink Floyd this week.
Yo.
Alright, so start off where it all started, 1965.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff from this time. They were very bluesy.
Yeah.
They released some of their live stuff from this time on vinyl.
Yeah, I think I saw they had some recordings from December 1964 or something like that. And they released a couple singles in 65. But yeah, that was like right after they started.
Yeah.
They had a different name back then, didn't they?
Yeah, I totally forgot to look that up. So
it started with an S. It's like Starship something, right?
Yeah, Starship Troopers. There we go.
Yeah. Was it? Starship
No, I just
Troopers?
pulled that out of my ass.
I'll kill you. They took 2 years to make an album, I guess. Really get their shit together.
Oh, well, they did a whole bunch of singles leading up to it, so that's
Yeah.
why, like, See Emily Play, Apples and Oranges.
So Piper at the Gates would be like an amalgam of all the singles they put out or something?
Well, see, it's interesting. The different Piper at the Gates of Dawn have different set lists here, and that's what I want to get to is I have a UK version of Piper, so mine doesn't have See Emily Play on it. I don't have certain tracks. I do have Bike on here, but I don't think that's on the US one. I mean, Kevin, look up the US track for this because I want to compare it real quick. I want to be able to.
About what's on the UK version.
Okay, I'll talk about this. Yeah, that's good. So on here we have Astronomy Domine or Domine. See, some people don't see the little accent above the E, and they call it Domine, and it's like, oh, Domine.
It's actually, I have it written down here. It's Domine.
Domine?
It's, the definition is Lord or Master.
Domine.
Yeah, so it's, well, whatever, man.
It's
Italian?
Yeah.
Different language or something? I think it's an English word, but yeah, basically astronomy master or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they also have Interstellar Overdrive. Is that on the UK?
Yeah, it's the start of side 2. After that, mine goes to Lucifer Sam. Then Matilda Mother, which that's a great track. Flaming, Power Talk, which that's, and it's a lot of vocal stuff, doing some interesting stuff there, and it's a really cool track. And then Take Up Thy Stethoscope and Walk, which and then side 2 is Interstellar Overdrive, The Gnome, Chapter 24, The Scarecrow, and Bike.
That one always stuck with me. Bike.
I've got a bike.
I've got a bike. You can ride it if you like. It's got a basket and things to make it look good.
Yeah.
Track listing. Okay, UK release, US. Where you at? All right. See Emily Play.
Yeah, that's
How are Talk H?
Yeah, that is 5th on the UK. Take Up Thy Stethoscope.
Take Up Thy Stethoscope and Walk.
Wow.
Lucifer Sam, Matilda Mother. Side 2, The Scarecrow, The Gnome. Chapter 24, Interstellar Overdrive.
No Bike.
They don't have Bike.
So I got Bike.
Yeah.
I got Bike, and I got... What, Astronomy Domine is not on the American one either. Wow, that's pretty cool. And Lucifer Sam is...
Yeah, that's interesting, because Astronomy Domain is like...
It's a really great track.
That's like one of the biggest ones on that.
I know.
Same with like See Emily Play.
See Emily Play, it's like, why does mine not have it? But I have it on my Sid Barrett collection that I'm going to talk about later. So, this is interesting. This is kind of a weird era where UK and US distribution weren't exactly on board with each other really till about like 68, 69 is when you get more regular kind of balance. Because like with Led Zeppelin, I'm almost certain all of their albums are the same between US and UK. Meanwhile, Pink Floyd, Piper's got a different set list. That's really interesting. That's really cool. It kind of makes me happy, but it sucks that like See Emily Play's not on here. That's gonna make me sad. I'm gonna listen to this whole thing. I'm like, where's See Emily Play? It's a great track.
It's the first track on the American.
The one track, if we're not talking like real early Pink Floyd, that I'm always mad wasn't on an album, was "Point Me at the Sky." I don't know if you ever heard that one.
I probably have.
I'm almost certain it was 68, and I think it was supposed to be on our next album here.
Could it be on Amagama?
No, it's not on any of the albums.
Okay.
Point Me at the Sky was a single only, and then there's a couple other tracks. I wish I'd have written these things down, but I think this is more of a album rundown to talk about Pink Floyd, because I feel like we'll do Pink Floyd the albums, and then if we want to do another Pink Floyd episode again, I'm always down to talk about like the band themselves, their live shows, everything. Yeah. So I think doing this more of Pink Floyd Studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kind of did that. We kind of did that with the
Led Zeppelin,
episode,
yeah.
So if we could even go back to that. And
so we'll call this one the albums, and then we'll consider the Led Zeppelin one we did the albums.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of break these up into a couple of different episodes, so we can do it a little more in depth. So yeah, after that, I like some of the singles that got released, but I think the big change between their early point, so 65 through 67, everything leading up to Piper, the singles and everything, into their next album, the big change is Syd Barrett to Dave Gilmour.
Yeah, he the big thing, I guess, what the general consensus is he took too much acid and totally went
crazy.
Insane, yeah.
Which, it's really sad, because
he had a lot of
Pink
potential.
Floyd and it was really cool, really different, really interesting, and it was very not Beatles, but like
I was gonna
they
say
could have
that
achieved the Beatles.
It was
a
Beatlesy type of like psychedelic type.
Yeah,
they took it in a different direction.
And what's really interesting is a lot of people really like Piper. Like Piper's a kind of a cult album, but for those people, like it's in their top 10 favorites of all time. Yeah. So it's one of those albums that there's a lot of people who love this, and I find it interesting that there's some people who love just that album and none other Pink Floyd stuff. And I've heard people say that, and I'm like, you only like Piper? Well, yeah, I like Syd Barrett. And I'm like, but you don't like Saucerful of Secrets,
you're
man?
Discrediting everything else.
You should like Saucerful. You should like the rest of it, man. It's all great. It's all great. But I mean, I'm not sure we're done with Piper yet. I mean, we want to talk about some of like the weird sounds on this. I mean,
Astronomy Domini, Domini or whatever, however you want to say it.
It's a crazy.
It's such
track.
a like. That's the like the or is that Interstellar Overdrive? I guess they're both kind of like.
They're both really out there, kind of crazy stuff. But they did one of them live with Frank Zappa, and it's really cool.
I think that was Astronomy. I could be wrong.
No, I think that's Interstellar Overdrive.
Yeah.
I'm almost certain it was them with Zappa, Interstellar. I think that's from '69.
Yeah.
Which that's interesting. What's really cool is I heard that Pink Floyd was rumored to have been invited to play Woodstock, but when they weren't going to get a high billing, they didn't want to do it. They realized we're better off just staying in England and getting bigger. Yeah. But people forget, Pink Floyd started having a string of #1 albums way earlier in the UK than they did here in the US. I think Piper, if I'm correct, charted really high in the UK originally. Let's look.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
In the U.S., it only hit 131, so big difference. Much bigger in the U.K., but I think, let's see, Saucerful charted number 9. Didn't even chart in the U.S.
Yeah, because it's a totally switch of style there, I guess. Or not even style, it's just change of different singer,
yeah, more soundtrack. French albums 2, Dutch albums 14, UK albums 9, US 153. But it only charted in 1973 after Dark Side hit.
Yeah.
It's like in America, it's like we only want huge albums. We don't want to be fans of a lot of great bands.
Mm-hmm.
We want a bunch of sellouts
Yeah.
who are nobodies who appeal to everybody.
Yeah, the pop culture.
That are devoid of anything original.
Yeah.
And then Umaguma charted UK 5, US 74. But you could start seeing, okay, we finally hit in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think it's because a lot of people still like that Sid Barrett stuff from the first album. It's weird. UK has an appreciation for, like, all Floyd, but in America, there's, like, this disdain from some critics against Pink Floyd.
I feel like probably in Britain, people have their own opinion, and then in America, everybody's opinion is swayed by people saying stuff about
Adam Hart Mother, #1 in the UK.
Really?
Yeah, that was their first #1. That's what I remembered. So all of their 70s albums hit #1 in the UK. In the US, 55 for Adam Hart Mother. And Adam Hart Mother's such a great, underrated album.
But we'll get to that.
Obviously. No, I don't want to go. But I'm just saying, it's really interesting how in the US it really took much longer before they really recaptured a following. Because I guess the hippie crowd was so, we only like psychedelic rock, that anything that was a little more out there, that's just pretentious. It's like, wait a minute, we're just a little bit more experimental than you guys. Well, no, we're fine. We stick beneath the boundaries, you know? Mm-hmm. It's the kind of people who go, I'm all for equal rights, but it's like, whoa. No, that's the problem there. The one that gets me is, I'm all for freedom of speech, but this is more sacred than, and it's like, whoa, no, there's no but. You can't.
Well, Pink Floyd went all out. Like, they had to come up with their own sounds. They just messed around. They took some springs and went recorded it, and they put that in their songs.
And I feel like it really works.
Yeah.
I know. I think leaving Piper behind here. The last thing I really want to mention is really how, like, you notice this band's really willing to try stuff with instruments where it's not, okay, here's the song. It's 1-5-4. We're going to be in the key of E, and our solo's going to be off this melody, which is our singing, and this, that, and the other thing, and everything's perfectly structured. No, sometimes Sid Barrett's like, let's just jam for 8 minutes.
Yeah,
like, and they would do it, and a lot of their live shows really brought in a lot of that element. But
it's the Doors mentality.
Yeah. Where, you know, you don't need these, everything's got to be perfectly structured 3-minute song because people's attention spans are that of a frickin' squirrel's.
Yeah.
And
they really pumped them out in that early era of Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Because later they started to take like a year off in between albums, but it's really stretched. 2 out in 69, so.
Yeah. And if you count Zabriskie Point, they put 2 out in 70.
Yeah, that's true.
I do need to get Zabriskie Point.
4.
That is like the holy grail of the things I need to get. Yeah. I think I saw that on eBay. I might grab that, honestly. I might. It's tax return season. I'll go get that. Right?
Let's move on to A Saucer Full of Seeds.
Saucerful, man.
1968.
This is a really cool album cover. I've always thought this had one of the best album covers. I know some people are like, well, what the hell is this? What is this? And if you look, there's kind of a painting in the back here from kind of like an old-style classical painting, but it's being kind of cut off by different kind of space themes, planets springing out of a black hole on the side here. It's just one of those covers where if you really sit down and look at it, especially on the vinyl, which I highly suggest buying, you just look all over. You start seeing lots of different things. There's like a cluster up in the top corner, kinds of clouds and stuff.
Yeah, their artwork was really crazy.
This is a really cool one. And then it's the band here and a bulb here. But what's really interesting is Dave Gilmour's not in the picture. Actually, is that Dave Gilmour there? Well, that's
Here, let me see it.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. It's 4 of them, but I'm trying to see if this is when they've officially gotten past Sid or not. I mean, Sid's on this album on one track.
No, it looks like Sid all the way to the right.
Yeah, but it could also be Rick Wright because they look similar, you know? It's the hard thing about Pink Floyd pictures. Sometimes at different angles, it's hard to tell Rick and Sid apart, especially when it's not very clear and it's kind of a psychedelic style.
To me, it doesn't look like David Gilmour.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He's
and then when you
there in the picture.
Here's the thing: you look on the back here. I really think, oh, that's tough.
Well, if you think
on the back, you definitely have Nick Mason here. You definitely have Roger. That's Rick Wright, and then right here, I'm thinking is Dave Gilmour.
That kind of looks like Dave.
But then right here looks like Sid. But that could also be Rick, or it could also be none of them, and just some.
They could have blended the face. Something.
Yeah,
like
it looks
that.
like I think they did some weird stuff
because that's the last album with
Sid on it at all.
Sid on it. I mean,
Jug Band
Gumma
Blues
has some like tracks,
some live stuff.
Yeah, but Saucerful has the last songs that he worked on. Do you know which ones?
Yeah, Jug Band Blues is the only one he wrote. I don't know if he was involved in any other one.
Yeah, that one's...
I could believe he helped come up with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun.
Yeah, that one's a great one.
Great song. This album, Saucerful Secrets, is one of the most underrated albums of all time, in my opinion, because nobody I know ever talks about this album. And there's certain tracks on this that I can't imagine
making,
like... at all, and they're crazy. But Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun's a great track on here. Remember a Day's a nice track. Corporal Clegg. It's nice because it's kind of a Sgt. Pepper's kind of thing, and obviously, and it's the year afterward, and they're kind of having a little fun with it, which was nice. But some people were like, "Are you commenting on the Beatles? They're God's gift to the earth," you know. Some
so
people,
are we?
like. I kind of hate the people who think like the Beatles are the only band who ever did anything. It's like,
like
the Doors did some stuff. Yeah. The Beatles came, they invented rock music, and then they perfected it 3 times.
Yeah.
It's like you're ignoring a lot of things happening. You're ignoring Frank Sinatra basically starting a big movement of people going to see shows.
Yeah.
Then you have Elvis, who really brought rock and roll to where it was. But this is already after like Chuck Berry and all those guys. Yeah.
Such a weird.
There's so much stuff going on that it's like, yes, Beatles, incredibly huge, incredibly important. But you can't sit there and go like the Doors didn't mean anything, Led Zeppelin didn't mean anything, Pink Floyd. It's like, come on, man. Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Dark. Look, there's so much.
Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all of them would have happened without the Beatles. If the Beatles didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's always funny.
A lot of music nowadays would be different, but the music that came out then, I don't think would be a whole lot different. Like, maybe, because they did kind of break ground there. But
see, I've always had the mindset, at least for the longest time, where I was like, the Beach Boys were basically inventing everything they were inventing in the UK here. Led Zeppelin started and came over here and was really huge here. They would have gotten all the techniques from the Beach Boys.
They started here because they knew they were going to be bigger in America.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at everything Led Zeppelin did. I mean, Pink Floyd did a lot of crazy different stuff that said, oh, yeah, you can do this.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many bands, King Crimson. I could talk about so many bands that influenced so many genres. Miles Davis influenced a lot of music, jazz. Bob Dylan's huge. Elvis, obviously. Frank Sinatra, as I mentioned. There's so many important people in music and different genres that I always think that mentality of there's this one ultimate thing and everybody else is so below them. I've always hated that kind of Beatles elitism. But on the flip side, I always hate when people are like, the Beatles aren't even good. It's like, oh, come on, man.
Now that you say that, saying it like that, I hear so many more people saying they learned more from all these other bands than the Beatles. Like, they say the Beatles is great, all that great stuff.
But if you add everything everybody else did up, I'm sure it adds up to more than the Beatles.
Like, I don't hear a lot. Like, I'm sure it happens every here and then, but I don't hear a lot of people being like, I listened to the Beatles and it inspired me to make this whole new thing. But all
usually,
along,
like,
the
Beatles is like
Watchtower's been covered by like
Oh, so many people.
Yeah.
I mean, Bob Dylan there's more Bob Dylan covers than any other person. And I think that's just a testament to like how big and important he was. But he goes under the radar with some people. What?
Great riff maker, yeah.
Yeah. I just think one. Then the Rolling Stones have some of the most iconic riffs of all time, like "Paint It Black."
Mm-hmm.
You hear that, like,
Yeah.
yeah. People hear that, they know what it is.
Yeah.
They stop. Now, let's be honest. Beatles definitely have. If you hear na 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 na, here comes this.
Yeah.
You know what's coming. I do love the Beatles, and I think they are incredibly important. And don't get me wrong, they do deserve to always be toward the top of the list.
I'm not discrediting them.
I just don't think.
I want to get that across.
Oh, yeah.
Before you guys comment and
It's
say
just-
I'm dissing on the Beatles.
It's just
like
sometimes
they are very influential, but they're definitely not as influential.
I think that's the problem with lists.
Yeah.
Is sometimes people always kind of look at it and they're like, oh, okay, number 2. They look at it like there's this giant gap between number 1 and number 2. Meanwhile, it's like I'm sure the gap between 1 and 2 is like very small.
Yeah.
Especially if we're saying like Beatles versus Led Zeppelin on influence. You listen to a rock record now. I mean, I hate to cherry pick here, but you hear anything like Rival Sons or Greta Van Fleet, they're not influenced by the Beatles.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know who they're influenced by. They're Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I would almost say they're equal. They're equal. Like I feel like Led Zeppelin doesn't get as much.
Yeah,
credit as they
nowhere
should.
near as much credit.
But they're still like on par with the Beatles.
Well,
so,
it's because a lot of the '60s people who controlled a lot of the news and stuff that came around kind of were always like, well, the next big thing can't be bigger than our thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want anybody to ever be bigger than the Beatles. The
Yeah,
Beatles
that
always
makes
have to be the
Yeah.
penultimate thing.
Yeah.
Nobody can ever achieve that.
Yeah, the
You know.
elitist mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still think there is some stuff of that there too, because I know there's some stuff where sometimes I have people who won't listen to old music and they'll be like, well, that's old, it's not good. It's like, just because something's old does not mean it's bad. There's bad stuff from all different times. I don't think that's ever changed. There's always going to be good stuff and bad stuff. It's just, what is it, where is it, and how is it? Just like in the 70s, you put a rock record on, it's probably going to be really freaking good.
Yeah.
Just like if you put a metal album, like a real metal album out from the 80s, it's
yeah.
probably going to be pretty
Exactly, yeah.
good. It's just things
Everything
kind of
has their
change like
time,
that.
yeah.
If you put on a folk record from the late 60s, early 70s, it's probably going to be perfection.
Yeah.
So it's just certain time periods, certain genres just thrive. Look at grunge, which is alternative rock in the 90s. It just came on. Jazz in the 20s, which jazz in no other era would ever be considered the popular genre.
Yeah.
And in the 20s, people were swinging like it was no tomorrow.
Exactly.
Man, and that's just a crazy thing that's awesome is we never really know where her music's going to be going. It's just you got to keep trying stuff and doing things. And that's why I like bands like Radiohead, Tame Impala, Black Keys, who kind of try different things and don't just go, well,
this works.
And I don't even want to crap on it, but anybody who listened to that new Godsmack album, if you thought that was good, I'm sorry, but it was absolute shit. Perfect Circle's newest album was absolute garbage. All of these metal bands and hard rock bands just made these generic pop metal things, and they're awful.
You're saying Godsmack, but I mean, like, they're not my favorite band. So
yeah.
let's say Metallica. They put out their newest
well,
album
even
like
Metallica.
last year.
Yeah,
They're working on.
It
a
was
new
fine.
One,
Hardwired was okay.
It was okay, but like, are you like?
It's not comparative to their
so
old stuff.
Far from where they were.
Well, yeah, and I had somebody tell me Hardwired was better than Master of Puppets, and I looked at them like they had like 8,000 heads. I'm like, are you joking
me?
me?
Stroke when you were midway through that sentence and you mixed it up.
Hardwired is better. It's like no. If you said Hardwired was better than like Load, I'd give you that. Better than Saint Anger.
I'll give him Saint Anger.
I had somebody tell me Saint Anger was one of their favorite albums of all time.
I like some things off of Load and Reload.
They're fine albums. I actually would give them like a 3.5
on those
5.
albums that like you're gonna have hits and misses. So like definitely. I like
Hero
the
of the
older-
Day is a nice change-up track
Yeah,
from him. I really
yeah.
like that. But even give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. We'll have to
It's
do a Metallica episode.
Yeah, I could do that. It's just really interesting how bands change, and a lot of times, like, the fans of early stuff don't always gel well with the later stuff, which I do think Pink Floyd has 3 distinct fan bases. You're either well, I could say 4. I don't know how big the last group is, but I'll explain. There's fans of all of it, which I fall into that, where
Yeah,
I like all
kinda-
Pink
I
Floyd.
like all Pink Floyd.
I fall into the I
Yeah.
like it all. There's the people who like just the Sid
Sid,
Barrett
yeah.
stuff. There's the people who just like Dark Side Through the Wall. And then there's people who are fans of late era Pink Floyd. There are a minority.
I would group those groups from Sid Barrett, and then the after Sid Barrett, and then the after
Roger.
Waters.
Yeah.
Because then it'd be David Gilmour's.
Pretty much
So, yeah.
solely. Yeah.
But yeah, like I agree
Like,
with
I
that.
like it
yeah,
all,
There's different
and-
groups, and yeah, I like it all. And at the same time, you get into the how much of the band is it once you lose so many
Well,
members?
yeah.
and
And yes, I mean, if you put on...
you're just putting a name on it.
I mean,
at that
if
point.
you put a Momentary Lapse of Reason on right after Piper at the Gates of Dawn, you would never know that was the same band.
Yeah.
But then other people would argue it's not the same band. So that's why this is an interesting topic. Pink Floyd...
I wouldn't compare Sid's. Like that's a different thing, because they were Pink Floyd at that time, but they were also Sigma 6.
Did you look it up? It was
Sigma 6 because they were a 6-member group at that point.
Oh, okay.
And so they had the Sigma 6. But they were a different group then. And then Sid kind of got out, and then they just kind of continued it on with David Gilmour, but it did become a different band after that. Like, they kept this, like, like the space aspect of it, you know? Like, you feel like if you were in a spaceship, this is the shit you would be listening to the whole time.
Well, what's really interesting is I kind of look at them like Piper has like its own sound. I don't think any of the other albums sound like Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I will say Saucerful somewhat resembles it.
Yeah,
It's the
'cause they're
only one that
getting-
has a touch.
That's where they're kind of switching into the
And-
David.
well, and even I would say more sounds nothing like Sid Barrett, but then Umaguma comes out and there's some Sid kind of
Yeah.
still in there. I almost feel like Umaguma was done because More was such a failure commercially.
Well, let's get into more now because we've talked about Saucerful.
Yeah, we've talked Saucerful. The only thing I
so-
want to, I just want
Yeah,
to
you
wrap
can-
Saucerful
yeah.
up real quick. So right before we go into More, I really think Saucerful of Secrets the Track is a really cool one,
Yeah,
and I
it
really
is.
like the end, the organ. It's a very kind of Bach kind of
Yeah,
thing.
they do like a later era type thing, like towards the wall type
yeah,
stuff. It's like they pull from this era to almost into that.
yeah.
Overdo, like they
Oh.
really overpower it in the wall.
Oh yeah,
But
and-
yeah,
and-
they kind of pull some classical stuff.
Oh
there.
yeah, and I love that, and that kind of plants a seed in the band, I think, because from that point they do kind of bring in a little bit more classical element. I don't want to say like the Wall is just Vivaldi's Four Seasons, but
It's the writing style. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's the way
I had
they
somebody tell me
structure
that.
everything. It's really classical.
I had somebody tell me that the Wall was just Vivaldi's Four Seasons, but Roger Waters' version, and I'm like, no.
I was listening to Vivaldi's.
It's
Four
great though.
Seasons?
Vivaldi's Four Seasons is great, but I'm not gonna.
I don't think I've listened to
There's
the
no way
whole
you can
thing all the
compare
way
that.
through before.
How
but
could you compare something from the 1700s?
I listened to it once, and then I ended up listening to it like 5 times after that.
Yeah.
Sure, if it's their version of that, which it sounds nothing.
It sounds
like.
nothing like. How can
They
hey
fucking-
you?
They
It's
did it perfectly.
Nothing.
Like it is their Vivaldi's Four Seasons, though. If you think about it, because it's their masterpiece at that
Yeah.
point. Because they already did the Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, yeah.
So like, they can't make another Dark Side of the
Yeah,
Moon.
you
So
know.
if they're going to make another masterpiece, they pulled it off.
But even if you think about it, Dark Side of the Moon's kind of structured in a classical kind of way where you have the overture,
it's all classic.
you bring it in.
It's all
I love
structured
classical music because that's where the ingenuity of music is. Like, I've never listened to a pop song, and I hate to say this to people who like pop music, but even old pop music, stuff where I'd say like Billy Joel or Beatles where it's more complex.
Here's the thing with classical music.
Just doesn't
it
compare.
blends technical with emotional. Because a lot of music is either emotional or technical, like Dream Theater.
It's technical but not emotional at all.
You can't like
John Williams is emotional as fuck. Though.
Exactly. But yeah, and it's technical.
Yeah.
But he does pull a lot from those classical songs if you really look into it. But he's I'm not taking anything away from him. He's great. But
who?
John Williams.
Oh yeah.
The
did you watch the thing about did I send you a thing about, or did we watch that together about John Williams taking from a whole bunch of classical sounds?
No, I just realized
scores?
that myself because I was listening to like Swan Lake, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I heard the Star Wars theme in there. And
it's pretty close, yeah.
But
there's some stuff, yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's
well,
not
if you listen to
anymore.
something enough, it's going to seep in and you're going to accidentally. And it's not note for note. It's not like a vanilla Ice Baby scenario.
But, I mean, he could have used it note for note and it would have been okay probably because I don't think he would have gotten in trouble for it. Because copyright law.
Well, yeah, also, you can actually, like, if you play. I mean, I looked into it because I love Moonlight Sonata so much. I looked into if I wanted to do a cover.
I was trying to write a guitar part.
It's
for that.
so
It's
hard
really
to do
hard.
anything with
really
it.
Hard.
It's much more difficult than you think it is, and it's so emotive that it's really hard to do on a guitar.
It's far like the things are further away. Than like 7 frets away from each other. You have to do a weird tuning to make that work. But I love that song. I got a piano from my buddy just to play that.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's so good. I love Beethoven, but I just
to wrapping up
Saucer for the last thing I have to talk about is Jug Band Blues. It's the last Sid Barrett track.
That's one of my favorite ones.
It's actually really good,
and
that's why like I've had like Rolling Stone gave Saucerful of Secrets a 2 out of 5. That's a spit in the fucking face.
Rolling Stones like to spit in people's faces.
Yeah. I mean, this album's incredible. I mean, Let There Be More Light's a really cool track to start things off. Remember It Day's a good one. Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun is so awesome.
Yeah.
Corporal Clegg's a fun one that kind of has that Sgt. Pepper's kind of style, but it has a kazoo solo for Pete's sake, man. Kazoo solo.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Roger Waters.
Yeah, for real.
Saucerful of Secrets was the first track that Waters, Wright, Mason, and Gilmour all wrote together, which that's a really cool thing. Mm-hmm. And the version they did at Pompeii, live at Pompeii, is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I might talk a little bit about Live at Pompeii. I might write that down actually right now because I didn't even think about it. I think that was 72. I have the DVD. It's great. If it's Pink Floyd, I have it, except I got to get Zabriskie Point soundtrack. Yeah. So thank you I wrote that down. I think I might buy that because I saw it the other day. And sometimes you see something you really want. It's like, I don't even care what the price is. It's like, it's a thing. I really wanted that.
Yeah.
And usually if it's not too bad, I mean, I'm not going to drop $150 on one record.
Yeah.
But if it's the right thing, I'll drop $40, $50 for that Alice in Chains I got.
Yeah.
So the next album's More, the soundtrack.
It's a soundtrack for the movie of the same name.
Which is interesting because what's funny is usually when somebody... See, there's... Soundtracks and scores are kind of an interesting thing where usually a score is people doing music specifically for a movie, and a soundtrack is songs brought together for a movie.
Yeah, this is technically their third studio album, too.
Yeah, so it's a studio album that's also a score that's also a soundtrack.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, I've actually never seen this movie, which I've always wanted to because it has a Pink Floyd soundtrack. Yeah. So, I mean, that's freaking cool. I love Nile Song's great. That's a heavy track.
Yeah, it is.
That's one of their heaviest tracks from this time. I mean, I always thought that was a jamming tune. I mean, Cymbaline's a great one in here. The main theme's good. I mean, I'd say a lot of this stuff's really good. It's a lot more themes on this, but I think they do a great job at it. I mean,
did they do all the music for the movie, or
I've never seen the movie, so I'm not 100% certain on that.
Do research for that. I would imagine, because it's a whole album.
Yeah, it's like 50. It's close to 50 minutes. So if the movie has a lot of like dialogue heavy sequences, which being from the late 60s, I'm assuming it does. I figure it's probably pretty cool. It looks kind of like an art film from the look of things, which is kind of up my alley because I like that kind of thing. It's not because I'm a pretentious asshole, but it's because I think that stuff's cool. Which I do think. Yeah, I do think that's a negative connotation. I've heard people, Pink Floyd's pretentious.
Well, I meant the picture.
But
it's
even
like a negative of a and them standing
But
around.
Kevin, have you ever been? Pink Floyd's pretentious. They're just so full of themselves. They're jamming because they think they're just so good. It's like, you've never played an instrument, have you, dude?
I feel like a lot of people that say stuff like that,
they've never played an instrument.
Yeah, they don't understand.
They don't know
about music. Even stuff nowadays, like I hate a lot of like pop music and stuff, but like if you look into it, they've figured shit out. Like they figured out what makes people tick. Those three fucking notes that everybody uses. But like, then they have 20 people writing lyrics to a song, and like,
and it's basic as shit.
Yeah,
and it's like you can't. You're not gonna find anything.
The people that like that music are the people that are bitching about this music.
They play stuff all of them. They're just noodling.
3 notes.
They think they're better than me, but I'm better than everybody. You know, it's those kind of people.
Like in there, like
it's like you realize you're the pretentious person here. You're the person who thinks you know something about music and knows nothing, which is actually what the definition for pretentious is. You fucking cunt. You know? And I mean cunt in the British sense, not in the
Yeah, I might use that insult a lot, but I'm literally
I do it in the British
version.
I watch too many British things, and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those. I only like British people, though. I know people like that who only like British stuff. I'm not like that. I do like a lot of British stuff, but I don't only like British stuff. You know,
I feel like some people are like, oh yeah, if you use the word, it strengthens it and it gives it more meaning. Nah, I feel like if you use it more, then it loses
it takes the power away.
Like if someone keeps calling you a cunt, and if you get offended by it, but they keep calling you a cunt, after a week of that, you're gonna get used to it.
You'll either get used to it, or you'll probably punch the person by then. You know, it's like it'll solve itself.
Punched them already.
Yeah, it'll solve itself.
Yeah.
I think I don't have that much to talk about with more because of them being mostly themes and stuff. It's not like I'm like, oh, well, this specific song. I just would say overall it's really good. I like listening to it.
Yeah, that's 1969, the same year that
1969
came out.
Yeah.
So might as well move to Amagama.
Which
clump it in there.
I think it's an underrated album. I know people who hate this album, but
it is. What I read about this is that the first side has live shows from some live tracks from a couple different shows, and then
careful with that axe, Eugene. To get a live version that's really mean is really nice on this album.
The second side is apparently solo compositions from the different members. Yeah, that's what I read on the internet, but the internet's never right. So,
so what did you read again? I'm sorry.
It said the first side is the live tracks, which I believe that.
No, the first album is the live tracks.
There's two.
There's two. It's a double album.
Okay, that would make more sense then.
Yeah, the first album is all live.
It said the second album is a
studio
solo compositions from each member.
Yeah, although there's people who say that it's Syd Barrett stuff that they claim.
What I heard is that Amagama has the last things from Syd Barrett. That's what I was believed most of the time, but you say that his last thing was Jug Band Blues.
Yeah, that's why there are people who say that he was very involved in these tracks.
I wouldn't say he was very involved, but I think
I mean, you
They
listen to
could've used-
several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pick. You listen to that track, and you could definitely
What I
see where
heard
those
is
people
that
are coming from.
they used some of his stuff that he did right, but they didn't give him any credit. Like they didn't give him the credit. I guess something like that. I'm not sure. Don't take my words for.
I mean, honestly, my favorite track on the studio album's probably the Narrow Way, which is Dave Gilmour's stuff. I'm pretty sure Narrow Way part. It's either 1 or 2 is the one I like the most. It's an interesting one. And then Nick Mason's thing at the end's kind of an interesting little classical kind of idea. And even Roger Waters, he has 2 tracks. He has Grantchester Meadows, which is really good, and then Several Species is a very, very interesting track. And then Rick Wright's Sisyphus is pretty interesting.
The cover of this album.
It's so iconic
because it's
so great.
It's got them, one sitting in a chair, and the other one's standing in the background, and then a mirror sitting right next to them, and it has the reflection.
There's so many
and
people
then they're all switched around.
There's so many spoofs of this cover, and there's so many people who've seen this cover but don't know this album. Because I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that, but Pink Floyd, I didn't. What's this? Uma Guma? What? What's this? Like, I didn't know what it was.
The first time I saw that I was actually looking for Uma Guma, so I knew it was that.
Okay.
But yeah,
it's really interesting because the band switches. If you notice in the pictures, each one goes further back.
See, the reason I was looking for Uma Guma was because I heard that it had Sid Barrett stuff on it. And that's, that's why I was.
You're like, I want Sid stuff.
Yeah, I was looking to try and see what else they had from it, but I guess they didn't have anything more.
Yeah, what's really interesting though, the live stuff's pretty good here though. Astronomy Domine, Careful With That Axe Eugene's a great one. Which that's actually Careful With That Axe Eugene. I'm trying to wonder, is that on any of the albums? I think that was a single. I have to believe it is.
I saw it on something. Careful With Your Axe Eugene.
No, it's not.
It might have been one of their first 3 singles that they came out with.
Let me look. I'm looking it up already. Get out of here.
It could have been their first recordings, I think, because they released a thing called Their First Recordings in 1995, I think.
Yeah.
And it has some of their first recordings. I think it might be on there.
See, it's interesting with like singles and stuff. Sometimes back in the day, it would be a non-album single, and sometimes it would be from the album to try and sell it, which kind of changed. In the 60s, you'd release singles, sell them, and release albums and sell them.
Yeah.
And then in the 70s, it was like you release the singles to sell the albums. Why would you not do that? And it's like, oh. So, Careful With That Axe Eugene. Okay, it's saying it's from Uma Guma, but obviously that's... It listed it as an instrumental, which I guess technically it is, but there's a scream in it. There is a scream.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm almost 100% certain that's... Oh, wow. I never knew that. Zabriskie Point was from Michelangelo Antonioni. He's a good director. I really like a lot of his stuff. He does some really cool out there stuff. Shit.
Yeah.
I need to see Zabriskie Point then.
Jeez.
Man, wow. I call myself a Pink Floyd diehard. I have all the box sets and everything, and I haven't seen any of the movies they've done. Yeah. Which those would be some good reviews to do. Yeah. We got to review all the Pink Floyd movies. But anyway, Careful With That Axe Eugene was the B-side to Point Me at the Sky, like I was talking about, which that is a single I would love to get, is Point Me at the Sky. I might buy the Zabriskie Point soundtrack today. I might have to do that. I mean, I love Pink Floyd so much.
We're almost there. We'll talk about it.
I mean,
anything else you wanted to touch on
from
with
Uma Guma? Let me just say, I mean, obviously I love the album cover. The studio stuff's good. The live stuff's good. And then it has Saucerful Secrets Live, which is really cool. Which is a cool one to put on if like you're just chilling with some people and you want some background music. So Umaguma's great because it's got some weird jam stuff and some interesting ideas. That's just some really cool things for like a cool, maybe if you did like a light show, it'd be cool. Pink Floyd light show just adds up, you know, like it's just right. It's the right equation. But yeah, no, I think we can move on.
Yeah. Well, after Umaguma, there's 1970.
We're gonna go with Atom Heart Mother.
They came out with Atom Heart Mother, but before that, since we don't really have much to say on it other than you won it and you're gonna get it today,
Zabriskie Point.
I do have a little tidbit about that. Jim Morrison wrote the track "L'America" for that movie, but Antonioni rejected it, and then they just ended up putting it on the next album they came out with.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then I think Jim Morrison died the next year, right?
Wow! Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was
71.
only in Paris, and
he died 71, but
it was 71 or 72.
It was 71 because it was right after Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin.
Okay.
71. Unless it happened at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was my little tidbit for Zabriskie Point. Jim Morrison wrote L'America for it, and he got rejected, and it ended up on their album instead of the movie. But Atom Heart Mother, this is the first, like, breaking into the 70s, and then every single album after that had some amazing fucking, like, iconic tracks on it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that this is such... It's... How do I put it? With Atom Heart Mother, it's an underrated album, which is something I've said about all these. See, because I feel like a lot of the early Pink Floyd stuff gets so overlooked by, starting with Dark Side. I mean, when you have the second best-selling album of all time, you're going to have some albums get overlooked because of it.
This album's like a...
but Atom Heart...
Definitely like a classic
very
album.
This starts the very classic.
Atom Heart Mother is 6 different parts.
But
it's the one side of the... Side one, Atom Heart Mother, Father's Shout, Breast...
Yep. Breast milky, mother for
funky dung.
Mind your throats, please. Reemergence,
That's
which
technically the same song.
I think it's. I love it so much though.
Then the second side has If Summer '68,
which is
Man, and then it has another type of classical.
Did you say Fat Old Man, Fat Old Son?
Fat Old Son, man.
Fat Old Man.
Thinking of that Batman thing that you should.
Yeah, there we go.
And then it has
Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which is 3 parts.
Yeah, 3 parts.
Which was written by the whole band together, which that's cool. Yeah. And the title track was 2. Although the title track, which is interesting, on the vinyl it just calls it Atom Heart Mother, but I believe on the CD and subsequent versions it's Atom Heart Mother Suite. Okay. They call it a suite because they tracked all of it. And also on a CD it doesn't have the tracks for all the different parts. It's just one track. Because I have every Pink Floyd album digitally and on vinyl, but I don't have the CDs, which I guess that's something I should consider getting the CD box set. But I don't know. Part of me is also like...
I have Echoes on CD.
Oh, you mean metal?
I have Echoes on CD. Echoes. It's a compilation.
Oh, the best of... Oh, the double disc thing? Yeah. I have that. Yeah, it's good. But yeah, Atom Heart Mother, I think it's a really cool album cover. The cow. Yeah. It's really different, and I think this is the first time they worked. No, I'm totally off base with this. The people who did the album cover was Hypnosis, and is this the first time they worked with them? No, there's no way. I think they worked with them from the beginning. I can't find the credit though. Let me look. Umaguma. Let's look. Let's go album cover. Hypnosis. Yeah. So. I think Piper was even Hypnosis, if I'm correct. But anyway, back to Atom Heart Mother. That's neither here nor there. It's a very underrated album. I do know some sites that do put this album way up there with some great albums. I know one place I like to go, Best Ever Albums. It's a good site that has a lot of different review things kind of tied in, different people weigh in, and Adam Hartmother on their site has like an 87, and it ranks like number 187 on the all-time album. So that's kind of cool. Top 200. Meanwhile, Rolling Stone would never recognize this album.
Yeah.
Oh, Long Jam. Oh, how full of themselves. It's like, but you're a person who's full of themselves.
Yeah.
You know, like, what are you talking about? Oh, that's very like you. You just like pretentious things, so you're just so full of yourself.
Yeah.
What do you mean, dude? Like, that's your problem.
Yeah, so after that,
I want to talk about Relics.
Okay, yeah, we can go to Relics.
So 71.
It's a compilation album, but Alex,
I have it, so it's cool to have because
there's tracks on there that aren't usually, or they threw some singles on there.
Yeah, this has Arnold Lane, Interstellar Overdrive, See Emily Play, Remember a Day, Paint Box, Julia Dream, Careful with That Axe, Eugene.
Yeah, so this one would actually be a good one to get.
It covers you if you have all
the singles together.
The only thing is it doesn't have Point Me at the Sky, which it's like.
Yeah.
Apparently the band didn't like Point Me at the Sky, so apparently the single didn't do that well. Yeah. Or maybe it was something like the single didn't do well, so then the band's like, oh, we're abandoning it. And then when they did Relics, they're like, we don't want to really save it. Because anybody who bought a single, they bought the single, that's cool. To me, I'm like, well, shit. You know, how do I get Point Me at the Sky? You can't get it on vinyl. You just, which would be an awesome record store day thing. Come on, Pink Floyd, you should do it.
Yeah.
Now, they might have already done it and I missed it. Now they're $800.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, Zabriskie Point, they released a double disc edition where it's some of their other release stuff that they recorded for it. And it's a lot of theirs and Grateful Dead stuff, which is a really cool thing. Zabriskie Point was Grateful Dead and Pink Floyd. I mean, for me, hard to get a better combo than that, especially that time period, to get a really cool soundtrack kind of thing going on. I think I'm going to be buying that today. Oh, you guys... This episode caused me to make a purchase, but I'm gonna make like 5 reviews out of it. Yeah. So, but Relics. I mean, it's a nice collection to have to get a lot of these other tracks, and it kind of covers my ass for not having to buy some of these singles or originals, which is hard to get. I know for those just starting to collect vinyls and stuff, you could get Piper and Saucerful together with a nice pair, which came out right after Darkside to kind of capitalize on that. And there's 3 pairs of breasts on it for those of you who that really excites you. They're not the most tastiest pictures or whatever you kids call that nowadays. You know, they're just kind of like just a pair there. You know, it's kind of ironic, a nice pair. It's a nice pair. Hey, I'm from New York. That's a nice pair of tits, you know? And I'm not offending New Yorkers because I have roots from there, too.
It's a nice pair there. I'm not talking about the fruit you're holding in your hand.
You got nice melons, lady. And we're off the air in 3, 2, 1. This has now been a message from the Sex Offenders Hotline is our sponsor.
So that came out in 1971, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same year as Metal, their 6th studio album.
Which this is kind of the changing album for them, I think. Yeah,
they totally changed there. They got One of These Days on there.
Oh, which that's one of the best album openers of all time, in my opinion, because bing, ding, 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 ding. Every time I hear that, I get so excited. And then when it finds out one of these, it's if you want to talk about it, it's the original beat drop or whatever they call that. You know, like
drop the bass.
Yes, like Pink Floyd invented dubstep 40 years before Skrillex ever did it, you know?
Yeah,
except it's 1,000 times better. One of these days, brother.
And then you got side B, which is
all Echoes, thing. 23 minutes. I love Echoes so much.
Is one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs.
It's one of my favorite songs. Yeah. Like, I'm like, well, what am I kidding? I'm like, no, it's up there. I mean, even the other tracks on here, San Tropez is a fun one to jam too. It's totally from nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's one you don't hear of that much.
Nobody talks. If somebody says San Tropez is one of their favorite Pink Floyd songs, it's really cool because I would figure nobody would ever say that, and I'd catch it. It's like, really? Or I like Seamus. Like, do you even know the song Seamus like on here? San Tropez, Fearless, Never Walk Alone, A Pillow of Winds. All of those songs are just hitting you like, what are these?
Yeah.
I'm a diehard fan, and I don't even know these songs. Yeah. But one of these days in Echoes, I mean, I'm going to be honest, they really dwarf the other tracks.
They do.
And there's people who kind of crap on the album for it, but honestly, if you drop the needle on this is a really good album.
Yeah, exactly,
the songs are good.
Yeah.
It's just, when Echoes is one of the all-time greats, it's kind of going to be the focus of the album. It's a whole fucking side, you know? It's one of my all-time favorites. It's one of the greats. I love it. The album artwork is it was somebody's ear. Somebody involved with the band. It was an ear, and they filled it with water. And then they took a really close-up photo. And if you look, you can kind of see how it's kind of like where it goes in on an ear. Kind of looks like a pool thing, but no, it's an ear. And if you hold it up, I would do it out, but my copy's not in the greatest of conditions, so I'd like it not to break. So, no, this is a really cool one. I love metal. I'm a metal fan. So she likes Slayer, right? Yeah. No, metal. Yeah. MEDDLE.
I like to metal around, you know.
Metal. I'll talk just a brisk about Live Pompeii. It's a great movie to watch, but it's also, they did release a soundtrack of it, which is really hard to get because it's expensive. It's a really expensive copy. But definitely want to check out. It's got a really cool rendition of Echoes.
Yeah.
The footage stuff's pretty incredible. Some of the stuff they capture.
That's 72, right?
Yeah.
Do they have anything off of Obscured by Clouds?
I'm gonna talk some Obscured by Clouds.
Yeah, but do they have anything on the?
I'm not sure they do. This is the magic about having this microphone. Is there? Let's see. Where's my Pink Floyd? Why are you hiding? Okay, there's Pink Floyd right there. Live at Pompeii. Okay, Echoes Part 1. Careful with that axe, Eugene. Saucer Full of Secrets. Us and Them, which is interesting.
That's on
there before Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah. But here's the thing. That's the director's cut. It's not on the regular version.
Okay.
But they had done it up in 72 before the album came out. Then it's One of These Days, Mademoiselle Knobs, Brain Damage, Set the Controls for the Heart of Sun, and Echoes Part 2.
Is Mademoiselle Knobs on Obscured by Clouds? Well, I guess it doesn't matter because they have the one from the Dark Side of the Moon on there.
Let's see
that.
Well, and they have Brain Damages from Dark Side also. But yeah, let's look at Obscured by Clouds. This is one that I also am not.
Yeah, well,
I don't know the set list off the top of my head.
Is because that comes out in 1972, which is the same year that.
No, that Mademoiselle is not on Obscured.
Okay, that's interesting then.
One of my favorite tracks on Obscured by Clouds, though, definitely has to be Childhood's End. Is a great fucking track from them on here. It's really heavy.
Yeah.
Free 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a great one. What's the Deal is a great track. The Gold, it's a good one. Obscured by Clouds. I mean, I really do like this whole album. I think the soundtrack's great, and I definitely need to check out the movie. Like, god dang it, like
the 70s were definitely the greatest.
Ones. I can't even believe I forgot to mention it. I'm gonna write this down real quick. You go.
Yeah. But you got metal with One of These Days and Echoes, and then you have Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals. You have all these great hits one after another. That Obscured by Clouds was just they didn't have those super iconic songs, but they still had really great songs on there. But it was it was their one out of their list of like. This was a number one, right? Was it?
Yeah, like all of them were UK
so it
number
still
ones.
hit number one.
I'm trying to think. What was I just talking to you about? Because I'm like, what the heck?
You were talking about Obscured by Clouds.
Well, what was specifically? Because I was about to look it up. Something Pink Floyd 72.
You were reading the songs on there. I'm pretty sure.
72. Well, obviously this is right before dark, so I'm just trying to think. What the hell they do in 72? I'm just gonna go to Pink Floyd.
In 1972, they did the Pompeii thing, Obscured by Clouds. So, yeah, this was their second to last album before taking a break every album. Because from 1967 until 1973, they came out with an album every single year. It's not including the compilation ones, but
oh, I know what I was looking up.
And the soundtrack. And they'd have two in each year. But anywhere where
so where were you going with it? What did you just say?
Not paying attention.
I'm sorry, I was looking this up real quick.
I was saying that like you had Metal, which had Echoes, and the other one.
Yeah, it kind of started
Dark
a
Side of the
transition.
Moon. Then you had Wish You Were Here, Animals. You had all these like really hit albums that everyone knows by name. But this Obscured by Clouds is like it's in there. It's still great. It's still hit number one. But it's not like as big as the other ones. Like it's not as like referenceable. You know?
I feel like more kind of falls into that too. It's like their soundtrack albums kind of do.
I'm talking 70. Like
Yeah.
from their 70s albums.
Yeah, I know. I just
like,
think what's interesting is
like
I do think their soundtrack albums kind of get overlooked, but one of their soundtracks that never happened that almost did that would have been really freaking cool. Guy Alejandro Jodorowsky, he made a bunch of crazy films. He made El Topo, which is a very interesting Western film. It's very psychedelic. He also made The Holy Mountain, which is a very famous crazy film. It's an awesome film too, but it's one of the most unique experiences you'll ever have watching a movie. After that, he had gotten an offer to make a version of the film called Dune, and Pink Floyd was supposed to do the soundtrack with a French prog band called Magma doing some tracks too. Well, both bands had already done some soundtrack work. They had some really cool music behind them. Magma had even come up with their own language, so they invented their own language, which that's kind of interesting and cool in its own way. But Jodorowsky's Dune would have been Alejandro Jodorowsky directing this really crazy, psyched out version of one of the greatest science fiction novels of all time, with Pink Floyd's soundtrack, with Magma doing some other crazy stuff too, and it was gonna have like Orson Welles in it, in like every important person. Frank Zappa was gonna be in it. I think Charlie Chaplin was gonna be in it, playing somebody. Like they had everybody. Buster Keaton. Like the studio realized what the budget was gonna be, and it took and it was taking them like 8 years to make it, and then they just gave up and then said, "Hey, David Lynch, do your version of Dune, but also include this stuff." And David Lynch got handed this Frankenstein project that had been in the works for like 10 years, and then they're like, make a good movie now, and it did not turn out as good as he was hoping.
I mentioned it in the Batman podcast, but I read some article that said that they were going to make another Batman after the Bat Nipple one.
The Bat Nipple one.
And it was going to be...
First after Batman and Robin, yeah.
It was going to be like triumphant or something like that, and it was going to have... Their one scene in it was the reason that it didn't get made, is what I was reading, of course. But
yeah,
it was supposed to. Batman is getting not like beat on by all these people. I think George Clooney was supposed to be Batman again, but they were gonna beat him, like beating on him, and then he was gonna have flashbacks and have every single enemy that was in that line of Batman come in, like Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Oh, wow.
Arnold as
Mr. Freeze,
Mr.
all of them.
Freeze, all like Danny DeVito,
Wow.
all those top line actors in the one scene, and then they're just like, apparently the studio was just like, this one scene would be the most expensive scene ever in any movie, right? And they're just like, we're not making this movie. That's what I heard, but I don't know how true that is. It was one article. I didn't look at the
It
references.
was an article.
Remember to check
I
the
didn't
references, everybody.
check it. Definitely, though, Obscured by Clouds. Still one to definitely check out. Childhood's End's one of Pink Floyd's best tracks, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely, if you put it on and you didn't know, I think somebody might forget what album it was on. Childhood's End could have been a track off The Wall, honestly, or that era. So you could tell they're finally getting into their own. And then they're just like, hey, let's invent a bunch of genres and make the greatest album ever made. So Dark Side of the Moon comes out in 1973.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I've made this well spoken.
Yeah.
It's the best album of all time in my mind.
They made an album that fits together like a movie. You don't need a movie. It is one. It's the fucking album.
The Dark Side of the Moon, if it was made into a movie,
version of a movie.
If it was to be made into a movie, though, it would have to be directed by a handful of people. And what I'd want is, but like they're all dead. You'd need like Kubrick, Andrei Tarkovsky, give me Jodorowsky. David Lynch is still alive.
Yeah.
David Lynch could do it. He's the only person alive who could make a Dark Side of the Moon movie, and it would be the craziest thing ever made.
Well, he did like
he did
Interstellar.
Christopher Nolan did Interstellar.
Did he?
Yeah, did you ask who did?
Yeah, that was Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan. I don't know that Christopher Nolan could do like a whacked out movie like this. Like Interstellar is weird, but
I
like
wouldn't say that it's Dark Side's so whacked out. It's like,
I mean, I'm talking Dark Side. You'd need it to be like a full art house film. There's no other way to do it.
It's not The Wall.
It isn't The Wall, but it would need The Wall's.
See, the thing
kind of.
is this movie could work in an Interstellar type format.
Yeah,
it's like if it just had the space aspects.
Christopher Nolan is a good enough director who I mean, he could find a way to do it, I think.
Yeah. That's what I think. This one would work together. It would work fucking perfectly for something like that.
I also need to talk about a couple of other things.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, I'm gonna rate that. Okay, so Dark Side here, I mean, we could talk for a whole podcast just on this album. I mean, I'm not sure
here, but
I mean,
we'll touch on a few things.
From start to finish, I don't think there's a better album in my opinion. I really can't.
If you listen to it all at once, it's amazing together, but you can just pick a song out and listen to it by itself and it's just as great. Yeah.
Money was a #1 single, believe it or not, and it's funny because the song kind of was like making fun of the idea of it's a hit. Mm-hmm. You know, that's one of the lines in the song. Yeah. Money, it's a hit. And it hit #1 in the most ironic way ever, and people in 1973 just got this album, and people have got this album ever since. Yeah. This album remains in like the Billboard Top 200 albums. I mean, it's spent so much time on there, it's not even okay. It's by far the most innovative album at a specific time. And people are like, but Sgt. Pepper's. I'm sorry. I don't think Sgt. Pepper's compares to Dark Side, and I know that's crazy to say.
Out of every album, I don't think there's that many, like any album that has that many hits on one album.
Oh, yeah.
Like, every song is a hit.
Like, Breathe in the Air is incredible on this. On the Run is one of the most crazy-inducing.
Breathe in the Air. Yeah. But, yeah, there's Breathe, and then there's Breathe Reprise. And it's amazing.
Time,
Money, Us and Them,
Gig in the
Brain
Sky,
Damage, Eclipse.
Yeah.
All of them. Amazing.
Yeah, this whole thing, Any Color You Like.
Any Color You Like. On the Run is crazy. If you listen to that with headphones or with a surround sound,
yeah, it's awesome. That's why I have the album in quad. I need to get a quad player so I can do Dark Side on quad. I will love every second of it. I mean, this album has so many genres on it too, because it's got electronic synth stuff. It's got innovative sound ideas.
Yeah.
It has overdubs. It has people asking and answering questions like what do you?
We'll have to.
There ain't no Dark Side of the Moon.
To do like
it's all dark.
In-depth review on this album.
Yeah, Dark Side does need a breakdown itself. So I think we can move
just
past
to keep that short.
This incredibly iconic album. The album cover is the most iconic album artwork of all time, no doubt. I show somebody the line going into triangle with rainbow coming out. They're not thinking anything else. There's no way to confuse that with anything else.
Yeah,
it is
the prism
only.
It's awesome. I love it. So many people have gotten that as a tattoo too.
Yeah,
I've considered that as a tattoo.
It's awesome.
So that was their last album where they didn't take a break in between. They probably had the success of this album. They're like, all right, let's take a year.
Well, yeah. Well, they debated hanging it up because they said, what else is there left to achieve?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were like, well, what do we have yet to do? And then they're like, we really wish Sid was here.
Yeah.
And then they did.
And they did.
Well,
and then 1975, they did Wish You Were Here.
Wish You Were Here.
Again. Not as many songs on this album, but it's just
5
as long, right?
Yeah, it's it's 40-some minutes.
Yeah.
It's
but again,
5 tracks.
Every single one is a fucking hit.
Oh yeah, Shine on You Crazy Diamond. You have 9 parts.
How many? What is it? 1 through 6.
It's like 1 through 5, and then 6 through 9.
I've learned that, and that was like probably where I learned how to do bends really good with guitar. Like this.
And then Welcome to the Machine.
Welcome to the Machine.
So good. It's so cool. I love
Welcome, my son.
the different sounds. Just
Welcome to the machine. I swear they just got they just went up to like a washing machine.
What I would love to do is to do some weird editing with 2001: A Space Odyssey, like all of the footage. Like if I could get access to like the vault of footage they have. Chop around with stuff and like mix in some Pink Floyd stuff, which is something I do have kind of written down. But Welcome to the Machine would line up perfectly with the part where they find the obelisk item on the moon.
Yeah.
And they're all walking up and then they're grabbing their heads and they don't understand things and then it's like zooming it as it's a crazy scene. But with that track, I mean, I know not maybe conceptually, but I feel like it would work visually, auditorily. It'd be kind of weird, off-putting, but kind of like, what the hell am I watching? But like, what the hell am I watching? This is awesome.
Have a cigar.
Have a cigar, which kind of ties in with the album artwork.
Yeah,
it's a guy getting burned by a suit, and it's funny because the guy's literally on fire. It's
gonna fly high, you're never gonna die.
Yeah.
You're gonna make it if you try.
My favorite line in To Have a Cigar is, by the way, which one's pink?
Yeah.
Because it's so true of so many of those people who are like, they make so many decisions on the music in the music industry, but they know nothing.
Yeah.
They don't keep track of anything. They're just like,
they just
I understand what the people want. People want a great product. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you call music a product, you should not be in charge of it.
Exactly, yeah. It's not just something to be sold.
Some freaking suits, man. Down with the man. Which people always forget, like, prog music's very down with the man, too. Just like punk music was down with the man.
Yeah.
Prog music was down with the man, too. It's not like prog music was like, oh, the man's good. No. Rock music's always been about down with the man, you know?
Yeah, this is a great album just to put on in the background.
Oh, Wish You Were Here, the track.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very iconic.
If you haven't heard it in a long time, or if you haven't heard it at all, put it on, after this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Wish You Were Here. Wish You Were Here I also would consider a very underrated album because I feel like a lot of people overlook this one because, well, there's Dark Side and The Wall. What about, and then Wish You Were Here was huge. Yeah. But then the next one's a very underrated album, too, which... I'm just going to say the word underrated this whole episode. Although I can't really say Dark Side's underrated unless we're talking about Rolling Stone's album list, 43rd all time. You do a list of the top 500 albums, Dark Side of the Moon's 43rd. Rolling Stone, I'm sorry. Best Ever Albums has it #1 all time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not, and I know I'm cherry picking the one site that gives me the answer I like the most, but Best Ever Albums, it has a nice balance of things, and it isn't just. Rolling Stone kind of is certain things make their list. Like, Number of the Beast isn't in their top 500 albums. I'm sorry, but that's one of the top 500 albums. I mean, it's very influential in metal, and it's very important to that genre. Bitches Brew was like 70. It's so much more inventive than a lot of the albums above it.
Yeah.
But, we could give that credit. Meanwhile, like, not even a diss on these things, but, like, Dark Side of the Moon was 43rd. And it was behind, like Trout Mask Replica.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was higher than it. It was like Trout Mask Replica is one of the hardest to listen to things ever. And I understand it is an anti-record industry, this thing does not sound right kind of album. But that should not put it higher than Dark Side of the Moon, which is like a perfectly composed album. I just think they dropped it because they're like, well, it's better than the Beatles. We can't admit that. They're like, we can't admit that the Beatles aren't perfect.
Well, after Wish You Were Here, I feel like they waited another.
They gave another gap, and then they came to
another 2 years, and then I feel like this album, Animals,
man.
I feel like more people reference this than Wish You Were Here, actually, because I hear more people talk about
I hear a lot
Animals.
of people talk about this one, and on Best Ever Albums, this one's actually kind of high rated. It really is. Rolling Stone gave this a 2 out of 5 back in the day, which just goes to show how much Rolling Stone hated Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd for whatever reason. They were huge, they just couldn't
acknowledge
They couldn't acknowledge that they are on
success,
par with the Beatles, and maybe that's like, oh my god, no. And then they kind of crap on Elvis too, which is, well, they don't really crap on Elvis, but Elvis doesn't get the recognition he deserves from Rolling Stone. They're like, his first album's great and it started something, and then the rest of his albums did not deserve to be recognized. It's like, really? He did nothing else? You sure about that?
He had a whole career.
Johnny Cash, they only had Live at Folsom Prison and like nothing else. It's like,
that's terrible. Yeah,
nothing else, but. It is hard to do a list like that, and I will give you credit, but I feel like the process was also kind of inaccurate because they had a whole bunch of people do top 50 lists. But one of the things that might leave out is a lot of albums that a lot of people would consider, top 100.
The problem
like on the
with this
60s.
list is that it's never like a general consensus. It's always one person's opinion.
Well, yeah, and it was like the members from Coldplay were part of the people who were involved in the voting process, and it's like, of everybody you can choose to have a good music opinion, it's like a whole bunch of random critics. It was like a handful, and Coldplay and a couple other bands like that.
Like, what sold the most? What had the most influence? Who still listens to it? How many people still buying it?
And sometimes it's hard to really measure those things, and I understand that. That's hard. And really that's why like those lists are kind of bullshit.
It's a lot harder than
but
just
part of it's also it's cool to do a list like that, and it's really awesome to talk about it.
Yeah, at least tell you that it's your opinion and not that.
Yeah, Rolling Stone's like, this is the top 500 albums. Like, what are you talking about? It's like Dark Side 43rd. Who the fuck voted on this? Who voted on this? Obviously not the general people, because I'm pretty sure if like the general public votes on top albums all time, like Zeppelin 4, Dark Side, those albums are gonna be way up there. And like Zeppelin 4 was like 110. It's like, what the fuck? Zeppelin 2 was like 87. It's like, who did this voting? So
Animals is their 10th album. It's got 3 animals. Dogs,
got the 3 different animals, and it has the pigs on the wing. It has the 2 pigs on the wings. You have part 1 and part 2, which they're actually little interesting.
Well, I'm saying it
pieces,
but
it
involves 3 animals.
But yeah, this is kind of the Animal Farm kind of thing. Yeah. This was kind of done in that Animal Farm fashion of, we're gonna basically break it down, and people are basically animals. You're either a dog of war, you're a greedy pig, or you're a mindless sheep.
Yeah.
And it's just really funny.
Self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, definitely give this a listen if you haven't.
it's incredible, and it
Yeah.
really breaks things down in an interesting way. And I think some people go, well, isn't that an oversimplification of things? Well, yeah, it's a 40-minute album. Of course, it's going to be an oversimplification of the entire functionality of the world. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of simplification.
And
yeah,
free animals too.
yeah, it's like, yes, but the point should get across that it's kind of a commentary on the different things that go by that sometimes don't get challenged. And this is kind of coming from an era where people are starting to comment on the military-industrial complex and some of the problems in the military just having endless spending, just ramping up the costs and not concerning about anything else and fighting a war.
When I was like in elementary school and they're like, yeah, military budget's like higher than everything else. It's like 32% of everything. I was like, why? We're not in a war.
It's like
Every
what the
time.
hell's going on?
And then you hear of them making a new gun every other week, and it's just like, you didn't even use the last one.
Well, and it's because it's the military-industrial complex. It's there just to make money.
Exactly.
Well, and here's the thing. It's a complex issue because at this point there's so many jobs in it that by cutting back on it, you'd actually be hurting the economy of the country.
They're making stuff that fast because it makes it seem like they need the money then.
Yeah.
They can just keep the cost up. But, you know.
Anyway, Pink Floyd Animals.
Yeah,
it's a great album cover. The factory with the giant inflatable pig actually flown. That was an actual. This is a picture that was taken. I really love it.
Yeah, it's an amazing
really
picture.
Think it's a great picture. I kind of got a picture myself of some smokestacks that kind of looked close to it, and then I posted online. I posted something that was kind of funny. I did it was like a year ago, I think I did that. But this is a great album. Definitely something to check out. I think this one's underrated, especially if you're saying a 2 out of 5 stars. I'm definitely gonna say it's much higher than that.
Never heard.
I'll put those tracks on. I remember one time I was doing snow removal, and late night one of the radio stations put on one of the songs. They put on like sheep or pigs, and it was like, wow. They're like, oh, it's for you snow guys. We're doing stuff we usually don't do, and they did like that, Stairway, and some other long songs like Freebird and stuff. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. But Animals is great. It's really the tracks. The 3 different animals are all broken down. And
the songs definitely speak for themselves. You just have to listen to it, and we'll definitely tell you more than we can about it.
Yeah.
Cutting a little close here. We'll just have to pump through it.
We have The Wall.
Yeah, The Wall is their 11th studio album.
Incredibly
Came out
iconic.
1979. I would say if The Dark Side of the Moon didn't overshadow it, this would be as big as Dark Side of the Moon. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people who say it is big. And if you look at record sales and stuff, like, it's up there, too. It's 39 million as opposed to 53 with Dark Side.
Yeah, I mean they didn't hit it on the head with every single song like they did with Dark Side.
Yeah, that's another thing
but
a lot of it's like operatic things setting things up. You can't. Not every scene is going to be perfect in a film. You have to have scenes that set up what's coming.
I know that another side of the or another Brick of the Wall Part 2
with hit number 1.
Hit number 1 in America.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, no, so many great songs on this, though. I mean, let's be honest. If we're going to talk about how many great songs are on this, Comfortably Numb, Run Like Hell, Another Break in the Wall Part 2.
There's a lot of songs.
Mother, Mira's an interesting track. I mean, everything on this thing is...
That's not Danzig's Mother either.
Mother. Yeah, could you imagine if that was on here? Tell your children not to ride my way. And it's... It'd have to be like they bring Roy Harper back just to do that. He does Mother. We're gonna move forward.
But I don't know who you. I don't know who hasn't heard anything from
this era.
The Wall
The
because
Wall.
like Comfortably Numb everyone says has the best solo ever.
It's so good.
Like
I go between that and Time because personally I think Time is so
yeah, that's definitely one
incredible.
of my favorite solos. I've learned that.
It's tough though because Comfortably Numb has 2 amazing solos, so it's so hard to pick against it. Run Like Hell, I remember the first time I ever heard it, I was like, first time I heard it like starting up, I'm like, whoa, is this like a U2 song?
Yeah.
But this is really, 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 and it's like, I know where U2 got their sound from.
Yeah, yeah.
They got it from Floyd, man.
Yeah.
They got it from Run Like Hell. Like, that's the original U2 song.
How can I put enough effects on this to make it work?
See, I have an original Dark Side, The Wall from '79, so it's really cool. It's
awesome.
It's a little beat up, but
yeah.
The Wall. There's not that much that we can say that hasn't been said.
The tours, like
huge.
They broke some ground there because of how big their stage setup was.
Oh
like,
yeah,
they had the wall,
and they have giant inflatable characters. They did a
back
dual
then?
wall, and they had a plane fly in and knock it down and explode, and a whole bunch. Yeah, they did the whole thing back then.
Stuff, yeah. I know
if you
they
ever
did it recently,
do the Roger Waters,
yeah.
I have the Blu-ray. If you haven't seen it, I'd suggest catching Roger Waters' The Wall.
My buddy saw them. I was so fucking jealous.
Yeah,
so jealous.
I wanted to see it too, but it was like $400
Yeah.
for tickets. Like,
well, his dad really liked him too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's how he got into it. Oh my god.
The Wall, though, then you have the movie with it too, which I think it's an incredible
later
movie.
In the year.
It was '82.
Did it?
Yeah, what was 1982? Yeah, and the soundtrack for it came out in '82 also.
I must have looked the wrong year. I thought, okay, maybe I read that the guy came up to him later that year.
Yeah,
to get
Alan
together
Parker
with it, 'cause it was like
did, yeah.
October or something, and then that album came out in March or May, something like that. Regardless, the movie is ridiculously crazy. The Wall tells a story about a character named Pink, which is a combination of Roger Waters and Syd Barrett.
And, yeah.
And it's a crazy story. You have to watch the movie The Wall, especially if you haven't seen it. It's definitely a mind fucker, but
yeah,
it's fucking crazy.
Oh, it's an
Definitely
incredible
check
movie.
it out.
I really like it. I really wish they would release a freaking Blu-ray for it, but
that
they
would be cool.
they teased it one April Fools. They were like, "Oh, we got a Blu-ray coming," and then they're like, "Oh, April Fools," and then somebody was like, "An actually good idea." Yeah. It's like, why would you do this to me? Also, they did a while back. They did these immersion box set things where they were the big deluxe sets of their stuff.
Yeah.
And they did it for Dark Side, Wish You Were Here, in The Wall, and people were like, "Where's the Animals one?" And they're like, "Come on, man." And then other people were like, "Well, where are all the other ones?" And I was like, well, but yeah, The Wall, I don't know.
Saying what we can't or hasn't already been said already. It's an amazing album.
Put it on. It's a rock opera.
Yeah. For the convenience of time, we'll just move to the next one here. Next one came out 1983.
So you notice a big gap here. Yeah. They had all kind of done some solo albums.
Been having some problems with
each other.
Yeah, because they had somebody helping them structure themselves in the studio with The Wall, so they were already having problems with that.
Yeah, what's interesting is a lot of these. There's people who say that the final cut was stuff left over from The Wall sessions.
I believe that because I thought the Tigers
when the Tigers break free,
which on. Well, I thought that was on The Wall, but
it's not.
It's on this one.
It's on the soundtrack for The Wall because it's in the movie.
That's what it is. That's what.
But it's not on the final cut though.
Wait, what?
Well, it's not on my version of the final cut.
Do you have the UK version?
I must.
Wait, or the one that I saw was the UK version because I have it written down for this album. I definitely saw it.
Yeah, because I don't have it on mine. I have Post-War Dream, Possible Past, One of the Few, Heroes Return, Gunner's Dream, Paranoid Eyes, Get Your Filthy Hands Off My Dessert, The Fletcher Memorial Home, which is a great track.
One. Yeah.
Southampton Dock, The Final Cut.
You have a different one because I didn't see the Fletcher Memorial Home.
Yeah, Not Now John is great.
Yeah, Fletcher Memorial
Not
Home.
Now John is gone.
That's one of my favorite ones. Yeah, that one. That was a good one.
Two Suns in the Sunset. Yeah, this is a real.
Yeah, that was a.
I
that's
really
a
like
good
this album. Yeah, I don't know why mine doesn't have When the Tigers Break Free on it. It might have been for time constraint on the vinyl, maybe.
No idea.
I don't know. I could have sworn it was on here. I think I have it on the digital.
It definitely is on there. But...
Yeah, well, When the Tigers Broke Free, apparently the band was like, oh, it's way too personal because it's basically about Roger basically talking about how
quitting, wanting to quit, or
his
problem.
And his dad dying from holding back tanks to let the other British troops get out of a battle, and it's like some people are like, that makes it obvious on the wall. Then they know it's specifically Roger, and they were kind of like, well, we don't want that. That kind of gets at it. But the final cut, what's interesting is there was a short film made for the final cut that a lot of people don't know about that I have.
I didn't know that.
Which I do want to do a review on that. We should watch it. It's only 18 minutes, and I have it. I could bring it tomorrow. I had to get it from Russian sites, but it's like apparently the band like really like buried this thing, which Pink Floyd's the only band to have like good stuff that they don't want to have out there. Like the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour is not known as being the best movie ever made, but you can get copies of that. You can't get the final cut video stuff. They did La Carrera Pan America, which was them racing in this big car race thing that they also did music for, which has some good tracks on it that are not on anything else. And you can only get it on VHS and Laserdisc, I believe. And there's also the one, the first live album, the first, it's obviously not Pulse.
Oh, you're talking about
the Delicate Sound of Thunder.
7 or 80.
89, 88, 89.
Yeah, that was after.
Yeah, but Delicate Sound of Thunder, there's a version of that came with a DVD, and it was like a triple disc where it was both CDs and a DVD. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to get a copy of, but it's just a rip of the VHS. But there's a video of the concert. It's really hard to get. Meanwhile, Pulse you can find anywhere. And it's like, but I want to have Delicate Sound of Thunder too, and I want to have La Carrera Pan America. Mm-hmm. Hey, Pink Floyd, you know what'd be the ultimate thing? Get all of your video stuff together in a box set for a Blu-ray set and go the videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Do all of it together. I would buy it. I don't even care if they go at $75. I'm there because some of the stuff you can't get, or it's VHS rips, which I enjoy VHS for what it is, and I still watch some of them. So I'm not a hater of the VHS format. So don't put me down for that. But would be interesting to get some high def versions of this stuff. And the final cut, coming back to it, I do think it's a really good album that kind of gets overlooked. I do think it's a great kind of, if you pair it with The Wall, it's a great triple album.
Yeah.
But this has some really great tracks in it.
Yeah, it's the last album before
all of them together.
Yeah, before Roger Waters officially quit in 1985.
Yeah, well, because he released Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, which I also have, obviously. right at this point, you're like, well, we assume you have everything.
Then David Gilmour got together with the other two, right?
Well, one of the interesting things I think we forgot to mention was Rick Wright with The Wall. He had gotten basically kicked out of the band. They had gotten him to resign, and he was on as a paid member for The Wall, and that's why he's really not involved that much in the writing of The Wall. So the synth stuff's kind of simple, whereas on previous albums Rick would do a lot. On The Wall, Roger's like, this is my project.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Yeah.
And then Final Cut, he wasn't an official member, so I think he contributed, but I'm not 100% sure. And then
he brought him back for a
momentary lapse, but he brought him back as a paid guy, not as an official member. So yeah, I know. But then Division Bell, it was the three of them together.
But Momentary Lapse of Reason came out in 1987. It was their 13th studio album.
Very cool album cover. I love the bed's imagery, but you have to sit there and go, you know how much work that must have been to set that up?
It's their first album led by David Gilmour, and of course it doesn't have Roger Waters writing on it. who considered himself to have written everything.
Well, Roger's Roger's an interesting character, you know. But I really enjoy A Momentary Lapse of Reason. I mean, I love all their albums.
So
but
there's a legal dispute with this album
over the name Pink Floyd, whether they could use it or not. Because Roger said, "Well, it's mine."
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
my band and everything. But I mean, they were all part of it. So
Yeah,
like,
and Sid Barrett was like the leader at the beginning, so it's like, where do you come off? But
yeah. And then technically David Gilmour took over after that, but Roger Waters was like the in the background leader guy. But yeah, that was all like the legal dispute was all worked out after the album was released. I guess. I guess they were allowed to use the name. No, just for the album.
Yeah, I think I also had heard some stuff that they were prepared for this to be a Dave Gilmour solo album, if I was correct, because he had already done 2 solo albums to this point. That's something I think I'm going to talk to.
They could have left it at that, though, but, I mean...
I think this works out. Learning to Fly is a really cool track on here.
Yeah, I like that one.
Dogs of War is interesting. One Slips, very 80s. On the Turning Away is a really... good track that I don't think gets talked about at all.
Not really, no.
Which, it's an interesting track kind of talking about how there's a lot of people who need help and people just look and go, well, somebody else will help them. And it's a song about how everybody expects somebody else to do the job and nobody's willing to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And the solo on it's incredible. It's Dave Gilmour, so I don't think that has to be explained.
Yeah.
So I always loved that one. Yet Another Movie's a good one, too. I think it has kind of a weird bass riff on that one. Round and Round. That's interesting. A New Machine, Part 1. Terminal Frost is good. New Machine, Part 2. And then Sorrow's really good.
Yeah, Sorrow's a good one, yeah.
So, I know people who kind of crap on this one in Division Bell. They're like, oh, well, there's no Rogers, so they suck. And it's like... they just were different. They kind of evolved every album.
Yeah.
And this one's definitely the most 80s of all their albums. And I know a lot of people who go, well, 80s pop is the worst thing ever. And I can understand somebody having that opinion, but this album is an 80s pop. And I think if you call it that, you're a little off base with your assessment of things. It's got some really solid tracks, and even Sorrow proves that they could still piece together a really great track.
Yeah, and they waited 5 years to come out with this one. They obviously had their solo stuff in between, but the next album is
7 years later.
7 years later.
Division Bell. This is one of my favorites.
But it's got some great tracks. It's got Marooned.
Oh, Marooned is so good.
Keep Talking with Stephen Hawking.
Keep Talking with Stephen frickin' Hawking.
They got, and then High Hopes.
High Hopes.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
I love the Cluster 1's a really interesting, weird kind of way to open an album. It almost has like a Brian Eno ambient kind of feel. But then What Do You Want From Me really kind of captures their old kind of... I feel like it's almost like mid-70s Floyd with 90s tech.
Yeah.
What do you want from me?
Yeah.
It's such a mean riff. Pulls Apart's a great track. Where kind of talk about the division between people, which some people have said it's him talking to Roger. Some people said it's him talking to Sid. I think it's better to keep it ambiguous because then it could be your division between somebody, which kind of ties into the theme of the Division Bell, the separation between people, how you think you know people, but you don't really understand them because you're never going to be in their shoes. Sometimes it's best, to kind of treat everybody as best as you can.
Yeah.
Maroon is a great track. Great Day for Freedom's even good. Wearing the Inside Out's an interesting, I think it's the last Rick Wright spoken vocal track he did. And it was the first one he had done since Dark Side, if I'm correct. It was his first vocal since, and I think it would have been... I think track-wise, Us and Them.
Mm-hmm.
Did he do Us? Did he do some of the vocals? Because I know Dave did a lot of the vocals on Us and Them. I'm just trying to wonder if any...
Might have been backing.
I just thought he did something with it. All right. Anyway,
I'd have to think. We'd have to look that one up. But yeah, it's a great album that they
Take It Back's
still,
interesting. Coming Back to Live, Keep Talking.
They took 7 years, but it definitely they made it work without Roger Waters. It's still Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
still rocks. They have some really good ones on there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there's some really great performances
this
on
one,
here.
I feel like was a better pull at Pink Floyd than the one before.
Than A Momentary Lapse.
Yeah.
I've always said that to some people who are like, "Oh, Division Bell was so bad." It's like, well, what are you talking about? It sounds nothing like the old Pink Floyd. It sounds
like,
a lot
what?
more like the old sound, like kind of capturing that than Momentary Lapse. And I even remembered somebody tell me that Division Bell was their favorite Pink Floyd album, and I wouldn't even fight them on that because there's some incredible tracks on here. I'm not going to put it up against Dark Side, but I really don't get the hate that these two albums get from some people. Because it's not Pink Floyd. Well, then technically everything after Piper is not Pink Floyd because it didn't have Sid. Mm-hmm. So, well, that's just silly. Well, maybe have you thought that maybe your opinion was a little silly there too?
Well, what is Megadeth, huh?
Yeah.
Switch members all the time.
Yeah. Now there's one more.
After this album, they waited 20 years, and they came out with The Endless River in 2014. I didn't get to listen to this one.
I love this one.
I've always mean to listen to it.
It's a different viewing experience.
I've heard some tracks off of it, but I haven't listened to the whole thing.
I kind of feel like this and Division Bell are great back-to-back kind of experience, but they're also great more in like an ethereal kind of ambient sense of kind of like a very lighter mood rather than the darkness that Roger really surrounded himself with and those kind of dark themes. This one's very much not a, let me listen to this awesome rock song. This is more of a, you put it on and you just kind of, it's almost a meditative album. And I meditate a lot and listen to a lot of that stuff. So obviously I'm not anti this, but some people, I guess, are anti-meditation or something. Because I had, Endless River was terrible. Such a disappointment. I was expecting them to capture that magic they used to have. And it's like, what the hell are you expecting this band that's constantly evolved themselves to do? You want them to just say, oh, no, we finally perfected it. Let's just do the same thing over and over again.
It's been 20 years, and they've changed their sound since then. So, like, you have to, there's a lot to think about that.
And even Louder Than Words, which is the final track on his, was, Dave had lyrics, and it's the only song with lyrics on it. And I know for some people that was a disappointment, but they kind of worked on all kinds of different sounds and stuff and got some new captured ambient aspects going. A lot of this was old stuff from the Division Bell era, but also since that Rick Wright had been working on and they worked on in different jam sessions and stuff, and they just kind of pieced this thing together. But Anacina is an amazing track on here. It's a song that translates in Turkish to I can't remember the direct translation, but it had something to do with like rest in peace or something for like Rick.
Yeah.
And incredible. But this whole album's great, and I really think all the way through, I definitely always listen to this one. So I don't skip any Pink Floyd albums. I like all of them pretty much equally. So,
is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Just real quickly, the other things, I have a copy of 2001: A Space Odyssey with Pink Floyd music in it, and it's 2001: A Pink Floyd Odyssey.
That's cool.
Which was done up, so that was really cool. We talked Delicate Sounds of Thunder's live album they did together in the late 80s. They did Pulse in the 90s, which was a really great live album. Featured some cool tracks. We talked Relics. Shine On was a cool box set they did that had all their albums, some rarities, and a book. And I had got the box set, but I had got it with the box and the book, but I got it really cheap because I didn't get the other stuff, so that was kind of cool. Discovery was all their albums in a book and things. They did that as a box set. And then the members of Pink Floyd, for those who don't know, were Sid Barrett was kind of the original founding member. Got Roger, David, and Rick Wright, who kind of tackled some different films, and they just went through different eras. So they just kept reinventing themselves. So, all right. I think that'll just about do it.
All right. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe, guys. It's good to have you listening to
great
our
to have
stuff.
you.
I mean, don't forget to comment. Let us know what your favorite Pink Floyd album or tracks are. Tell us your opinions on the different in different eras with Pink Floyd. What you think of the Syd Barrett era, the Gilmour era, the Roger Waters era.
Yeah.
And,
definitely,
just comment up. And I think next week we're coming up on the the Quentin Tarantino episode. We can't keep pushing that one back.
Yeah, I know. We've been pushing it off because I'm like, I'm going to watch all of them.
Yeah,
I still haven't gotten to them, so I'm just
same.
going to plow through them this week.
That's
I'm just going
to
to
do it.
But I'm okay with it because it's Tarantino and it's so good.
Yeah.
Definitely a fan. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Guys talking about stuff. We talked Pink Floyd. We talked all the albums. And we'll probably return to these guys, talk some other stuff, live shows and everything. And
we'll get into depth with different stuff there.
Different things. Maybe we'll even talk solo careers and things too.
Cool,
that'd be one to do.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well,
see you later.
See you on the next one.